This is Michael Popok, Legal AF, with some breaking news. A federal judge in the Northern District of Florida in Tallahassee has found every way, shape, and form against Governor Ron DeSantis, who improperly removed a state attorney for Hillsborough County in Tampa, duly elected by the people, because he thought he was a woke prosecutor supported by George Soros and had progressive democratic ideals that were incompatible with the way this despot, Governor DeSantis, runs the state of Florida. But in a bit of good news, bad news, in every way, after a full bench trial and in a 58 or 59-page decision, Judge Hinkle in the Northern District of Florida ruled for Warren and against DeSantis, except where it really mattered at the end. Because although the judge found that DeSantis and those around him, all for improper purposes, including transparent political gain in trying to get millions of dollars of free publicity by taking this prosecutor out of his position where he supervised 130 other prosecutors in Tampa, duly elected by the citizens of Hillsborough County to be their state prosecutor for that county. In every way, the findings that the governor made that were all false and incorrect, that he was influenced by George Soros, or that George Soros' fundraising efforts corrupted this prosecutor, false. That this prosecutor had a blanket policy not to prosecute certain crimes that were on the books of the state of Florida, false. The judge found that instead, what the judge determined is that the reason, very transparently, very obviously, from the evidence that was presented during the trial, evident to this federal judge, the reason why Governor DeSantis removed him is because he wanted to pay him back for being a Democrat and a progressive, and for no other reason. And the Florida state constitution says clearly that a governor is stuck with the prosecutors around the state, that although they work for the executive branch, they are independent constitutional officers. And unless they are removed by the electorate, you can only suspend them. So, of course, Governor DeSantis decides, let's find prosecutors around the state who I think are woke, whatever that means, who are progressive Democrats, who aren't with my program, who don't genuflect their fealty to me, and let's remove them. Let's suspend them. And he put together a team led by a senior advisor of his, Larry Keefe, and tasked him with finding all the Soros-backed prosecutors in my state, and let's get rid of them. And that's exactly what they did. So Judge Hinkle said, they looked through his social media for Mr. Warren. They looked through his campaign and fundraising materials and who supported him. And what did they come away with? He was a Democrat. The same thing he ran on his platform. Everybody in Hillsborough County knew that he was a Democrat, that he was a progressive Democrat. Also, no shit. I mean, he ran as a progressive Democrat, that he allied himself with certain progressive prosecutorial organizations and signed certain, in an exercise of First Amendment, and signed certain memos in support related to these organizations, supporting abortion and transgender rights. Well, of course, that's what the good citizens of Hillsborough County elected when they elected Adam Warren to the position. But to DeSantis, this was an evil stew of ideas that needed to be removed. The judge found that removing Warren for these reasons, under the ridiculous, preposterous position that there was a neglect of duty and there was incompetence, as those phrases are used in the Florida Constitution, because DeSantis didn't like this guy's background, this guy's political leanings, this guy's approach to his job, and then lied about him in the press, on Tucker Carlson, at press conferences, that this was a woke prosecutor who refuses to prosecute crime and we're going to remove him. Nothing could be further from the truth. All this prosecutor, Mr. Warren, ever said and did consistently, and all the record developed on trial ever supported, is that he was for, as all prosecutors are, prosecutorial discretion. The police make the arrest, but prosecutors make the decision as to who's going to be charged with a crime and why. He didn't say he was not going to charge certain crime. He said he was going to exercise prosecutorial discretion case by case. And when it came to abortion rights after the Dobbs decision, he said, although an abortion case hasn't come before me, I will evaluate it the same way, deciding whether to prosecute it based on prosecutorial discretion. And same thing for transgender rights. Well, that flew the governor off a handle. And he's, got a woke prosecutors refusing to go after crime in this state. And the judge said, that is false. That is beyond misleading. That's just plain false. And you knew it, DeSantis. And you violated Warren's First Amendment rights to express himself and to sign on to organizations and to give donations and to receive donations. So you violated that. And you violated the Florida Constitution. So why are we talking about this? Why isn't Warren back in his job, which is what he asked the federal judge to do in exercising his equitable jurisdiction? Why aren't we talking about today the reinstatement of Adam Warren as the Hillsborough County chief prosecutor? Because at the end, the judge, citing to a little discussed amendment of the U.S. Constitution, the 11th Amendment, found that he was powerless from a jurisdictional standpoint to give Warren the remedy that he was looking for, which is reinstatement. He basically said, he said expressly, last paragraph of his opinion, my hands are tied. I cannot rule. I ruled in your favor in terms of the findings of fact, but in terms of the conclusions of law, I can't give you what you want in a federal courthouse because the 11th Amendment, which was created not by the founding fathers, but later on, after a series of cases at the U.S. Supreme Court in the 1790s and 1800s, says that I cannot do it. I mean, to be fair to the judge, if he really believed the 11th Amendment, he probably didn't have jurisdiction to even hear the case at all. But he wanted to have this trial. He wanted DeSantis and Keefe and others to come to this trial and give testimony. And he wanted, obviously, to write about it in 58 and a half pages about how bad and disclose and rip the disguise off DeSantis. But at the end, he said, oh, by the way, I don't have jurisdiction. So what a lot of judges, especially really right-wing MAGA judges, will do is at the very beginning, they'll say, sorry, case dismissed, 11th Amendment. And the 11th Amendment, for those that are following Legal AF at home for their law degree, says that the power of U.S. courts shall be construed to not hear any case in federal court against a state, especially against the state if it relates to a federal constitutional crime. That you've got to do, if at all, in a state court. In other words, what the judge is saying is, while I'm powerless in my federal courthouse from hearing your case and giving you, although I've heard it, and giving you the relief you want of reinstatement, you can go across the street to a state courthouse in either Tallahassee or in Hillsborough County, and you can seek the same relief. In fact, on the merits of the state constitutional claim, the judge dismissed it without prejudice, allowing Warren to bring it back in state court against the governor. As to the federal First Amendment claim, he dismissed it with prejudice, meaning that claim can go up to the 11th Circuit, which covers Florida, a right-wing leaning circuit for the appeals, and then ultimately to the U.S. Supreme Court. So a Pyrrhic victory, it's like the old joke. The doctor says the surgery was successful, but the patient died. Warren got what he wanted in the sense of vindication because a federal judge has ruled in every way, shape, and form that in a transparent political fashion of retribution, DeSantis retaliated against improperly, unconstitutionally, against a prosecutor in Hillsborough County. And it was transparent. And it was done because he considered him woke. It was done because he considered him somebody who accepted campaign finance money from George Soros, that he was a progressive Democrat, that he participated in all of those things. And it was done, and the judge found this, a federal judge found this, because DeSantis wanted the publicity, that his office actually calculated that taking that stand against Warren and all the appearances on Tucker Carlson press conferences and media and all of that, and having Warren removed from his office by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, by FDLE, by police, pulling him out and doing a perp walk in front of his constituents. So when he runs again, of course, his opponent is going to play that tape. All of that generated $2.5 million worth of free publicity for the governor, and he was interested in that, and he wanted that. So he would excoriate and sully the reputation of Warren in order to grind his axe politically, to get people to vote for him, to look like a tough guy, and he didn't care if he threw this person's professional reputation into the trash. So what does Adam Warren do next? He's got a couple of places he can go. First place he can go is go register to run for re-election again, because I think he can run for office again in 2024 and take out the person that DeSantis placed in his stead while he was suspended. So let the voters speak. So if you're a voter in Hillsborough County, come the election in 2024 for Joe Biden and everybody on the Democratic ticket, look up Mr. Warren and make sure you put a check next to his box and get him back into office. And we'll go right around again. That's the first thing that people can do from a voting standpoint, showing that intersection of law and politics. The second thing that he can do, Mr. Warren, is he can go and file his state case, and then there'll be no 11th Amendment jurisdictional attack. It'll just be a judge with jurisdiction, and he's already got a pretty good record already being established. He can just sort of transport and import into that case, calling the same witnesses, putting on the same evidence, having the judge take judicial notice of what the federal judge already ruled, and let's go to trial in that case, and now go for damages, if not reinstatement, because he can always go for damages to his career. And he can go for, exemplary damages and consequential damages to get real money if he can prove it. But he can also at the same time run for office and let people at the ballot box vote him back into office and say no to Ron DeSantis and the way he's running, in a fascist way that he's running the state of Florida. This is Michael Popok from Legal AF reporting on some good news and bad news, but findings against Ron DeSantis by a federal judge that he violated the First Amendment and the Florida Constitution in removing a state attorney because he didn't like his politics.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.